At the start of the war in Ukraine, everyone started saying that it was Russia that was responsible for the Nordstrom Pipeline being blown up. But think for a second, does that even make sense? No, it doesn't. What does make sense is for Ukraine to do it to sabotage Russia. And now we have evidence to prove just that. Coming up in this episode. Also in the news, we have Tucker Carlson releasing his first episode of his show on Twitter, and within the first 24 hours, it has already gotten over 14 million views. And last but not least, we have New York City giving out free crack pipes, condoms, and Narcan to drug users. All of that and more on today's episode.
Facts over tracks, this and that, spitting slow, spitting fast, I could roast, I could gas, think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past.
We like to think that we live in a world where the mainstream media will not lie to us, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. The mainstream media will never tell us why the war between Russia and Ukraine started, and the truth behind the United States opening labs in Ukraine to conduct level 5 testing, which means that the labs are going to be working with live viruses. This is not something that we should be doing considering the massive outbreak from Wuhan that happened a few years ago. But it's okay because it's Big Daddy government and they will never do anything to hurt us or lie to us, right? Well, that's when I say you are naive. Watch this short clip. And these reasons are harder to pinpoint than you think. So these are the reasons I found so far. Russia has asked Ukraine to get rid of 12 biolabs because of the potential dangers that these biolabs represent to the Russian people. These biolabs are owned and operated by the United States of America since 2009. You can check the source right here. A lot of people are saying this is misinformation, but I don't know how this is misinformation.
A USA Today network investigation found hundreds of accidents have happened at labs nationwide, with little or no public disclosure.
Yes, these documents that I have screenshots for are no longer available to public-facing government websites. There are very few people still trying to be nonpartisan, and archive.org is one of them. Anyways, getting to the point. Reading from this article that was posted on May 21st, 2012, and was supposed to be for the amount of $1,106,610. The total cost to build a, quote, laboratory and work with, quote, pathogens. Now, why would I bring this up almost 11 years later? That's because if you follow where the missiles were first launched, it matched perfectly to where the labs were located. Then the mainstream media goes and claims that Russia blew up schools with kids in it. Not true. Looking at the information that I have here. Also, we can see that the United States Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland in March of last year admitted to the United States owning and operating 42 different labs across Ukraine. She said that she feared that the labs would, quote, fall into Russian hands. This proves what we've been saying from the whole entire time. I posted my expose a year ago, but people still don't know the truth about the situation between the two countries. And that is because of the fact that we are listening to the mainstream media. If you keep listening to the mainstream media, you will never get the real story of what's happening. With that being said, let's dig into the headlines of the week. Moving into the first article, we have a Daily Wire article. Tucker Carlson returns with his new show, Tucker, on Twitter. Tucker Carlson inaugurated the return of his popular show on Tuesday, dropping the first episode of the Tucker on Twitter after being taken off air at Fox News in April. Carlson is still reportedly negotiating his exit with Fox News, where he led ratings from his prime-time show, Tucker Carlson Tonight. The network took him off the air suddenly after his last show on April 21st, but he promised that he would bring some sort of show on Twitter. Carlson opened on the first episode of his show talking about the destruction of the dam in Ukraine, calling it an act of terrorism. Part of the dam fell on Tuesday, and as well as nearby hydropower plant, draining the Kavaka reservoir and causing severe flooding in areas downriver. Ukrainian and Russian emergency crews evacuated thousands of people. Russia and Ukraine have flung accusations at each other over the dam's failure. The dam, located in Russia-controlled territory, and the reservoir provided fresh water for parts of southern Ukraine and almost all of Crimea, which has been in Russian hands since its annexation by Moscow in 2014. The reservoir also provided water for the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, while the plant martins an artificial lake to provide water for its reactors. Officials are worried what could happen when the lake runs dry in several months. Quote, blowing up the dam might be bad for Ukraine, but it hurts Russia more. And for that reason, the Ukrainian government has considered destroying it, Carson said before referencing a December story in the Washington Post that described tests the Ukrainian military ran while considering knocking out the dam. Quote, when the facts start coming in, it becomes much less of a mystery what might have happened to the dam. Any fair person would conclude that the Ukrainians probably blew it up, Carlson said. He then launched into a critique of the American media, who wasted no time this morning in accusing Russians of sabotaging their own infrastructure. He also took shots at Senator Lindsey Graham and former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley, who is running for the GOP primary for president, over their starch support for Ukraine. Carson went after the media and high-profile figures for accepting certain narratives as true without due scrutiny. Quote, not only are the media not interested in any of this, they are actively hostile to anyone who is in journalism. Curiosity is the gravest crime, Carlson said. Carlson's new show will challenge the orthodoxies of the media, he said, and he plans to keep his show on Twitter as long as it remains a platform committed to free speech. Quote, as of today, where we've come to Twitter, we hope to be the shortwave radio under the blankets. We've told that there are no gatekeepers here. If that turns out to be false, we'll leave. But in the meantime, we're grateful to be here, Carlson said. And I just feel like Carlson is just so humble when it comes to these things. He's just like, we're just grateful to be here, honestly. Thank you, Twitter. Like, it's just very humble. I love him. I did watch the show, by the way, and I do think that it's a really, really good show. So check it out if you do have a chance. Check out Carlson on Twitter because it's really, really, it's a good show, and it's only a 10-minute episode for the first one, so might as well just check it out. Moving on to the next article, we actually have a Daily Wire article. We have, did Sony make Gwen Stacy trans in the new Spider-Man film? I sure hope not. Some fans of the new animated Sony film Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse are convinced about a fictional character, Gwen Stacy, is transgender. In the sequel to Sony's highly successful Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, viewers observed that the color palette used in several of the Stacy scenes appear imbued with a pastel blue, pink, and white colors of the transgender pride flag. The Pink News reported there is also a Protect Trans Kids sign on the wall in Stacy's bedroom. Oh my god. I just noticed that. Wow. Why? Spider-Man's for kids. Oh my god. Spider-Man. Come on. I used to watch this show when I was little. A third example comes from a scene where Stacy reveals her secret identity as Spider-Woman to her father, who is a police officer reportedly wearing a trans pride flag badge pinned to his uniform. The Pink News reported that many viewers interpreted the scene as a metaphor for coming out. The colors of the transgender pride flag are also incorporated into the innovation. Gwen Stacy is trans, one fan wrote. Her whole arc is a trans analogy. The colors are the trans flag, but most telling, her white cop dad wears the trans colors on his uniform. No cop is that much of an ally unless they have a trans family member. That's stupid. Another added, all the, quote, you haven't read the comics people are funny because neither have they. Miles isn't the same Miles as from the comics, so why would Gwen be? Infinite multiverse of possibilities, and we can't have a trans Gwen? Silly. Yeah, we can't, because that's for children and you're making up stuff. You're pulling stuff out of your rear end. This isn't something that follows a script and follows a story. It has nothing to do with each other. You just admitted that. So why pull out stuff out of your ass that has nothing to do with anything else, first of all? And second of all, why pull stuff out of your ass when you know that children are going to be watching this stuff? That's disgusting. Quote, trans and even cis fans have every right to say Gwen Stacy is trans, even if the movies never outright confirm it, another social media user wrote. Quote, you can't deny that it's been hinted at. The fact is, if she can make somebody feel represented, who are you to tell them they are wrong? I am. I'm Dimitri. Nice to meet you. I'm going to tell you that you're wrong because this is a children's show. You don't do indoctrination of little children on Spider-Man. Is that slow enough for you? You do not indoctrinate our children. No adult, or the majority of adults, are not going to be sitting down watching Spider-Man through the Spideyverse. Like, no. We're going to have our 7-year-old through 10-year-old watch this show. That's it. Others, however, slam the idea of said wearing colors of the trans community doesn't make you transgender. Quote, so if you wear colors of the quote unquote trans community, you're automatically trans or an ally to the trans community, even though these colors were here before. Make that make sense. And no, Spider-Gwen is not trans, one person tweeted. Okay, well, I sure hope she's not, because there's no such thing as a trans person. So it's either you're male or female. You're not, oh, a male to male to female or female to male. And that's not a thing. Listen, you can't, it's science. Trust the science. Trust the science. It's not possible. Oh, well. Well, that's going to wrap it up for the headlines of the week. Now, without further ado, let's get into the media's takes.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Starting off with the first article, we actually have an MSNBC article. We have, when it comes to his bond, George Santos has something to hide. No kidding. He's lied about his whole entire career. He has something to hide? Wow, oh my god. Who let the cat out of the bag? Who told you? It's just ridiculous that these people are acting like we don't know. Like George Santos has lied about everything. We already know he's lied about everything. And so has Joe Biden. He literally forged his documents and copied them in college. And he was caught. And then he was thrown out of college for copying other people. So it's like, and Joe Biden lies all the time. All these politicians lie all the time. So I'm not making excuses for George Santos, because I don't even like him anyway. But it's the fact that a lot of people do a lot worse than George Santos. So why are we focusing on George Santos again? Because of the fact that he's Republican. That's why. News outlets have questions about how George Santos posted a $500,000 bond after his recent arrest. The New York Republican doesn't want to talk about. Update, June 6, 2023. A judge on Tuesday agreed to unseal the names of the people who co-signed Rep. George Santos' $500,000 bond last month. It's been about a month since Rep. George Santos' troubles reacted a striking new level. Federal prosecutors charged the New York Republican with 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, and 2 counts of making materially false statements of the House of Representatives. The congressman surrendered to the authorities on May 10th. He pleaded not guilty at his arraignment, of course, they all do, and he was released on $500,000 bond. A NBC News report added at the time of that Santos was ordered to surrender his passport and submit to pre-trial services. Soon after, a variety of questions were unavoidable. Would Santos resign? Would House GOP leaders try to force him out? Would he soon face other charges as a result of other investigations? But another line of inquiry soon emerged. What are the details surrounding the congressman's $500,000 bond? As the Associated Press reported, Santos doesn't really want to talk about it. Rep. George Santos' lawyer said Monday that the indicted New York Republican would risk going to jail to protect the identities of the people who co-signed the $500,000 bond, enabling his pretrial release. This is not entirely new. On May 23rd, the New York Times reached out to the judge on the case, asking for the names of Santos' bond suretors to be unsealed, citing a compelling public interest in maintaining the greatest transparency possible in the proceedings. Okay, listen. This is the most bullshit excuse that I've ever heard. The media does not care about being transparent. They're not transparent about John Fetterman's mental disorder. They're not transparent about Joe Biden's mental disorders. They're not transparent about Kamala Harris's mental disorders. No, we're not. We're not transparent in the media. So why are the media pretending to be transparent now? That all of a sudden they care about transparency? No, you were never transparent before. You're never going to reveal Kamala Harris's mental disorders when it comes down to her laughing because she can't actually answer a question, her love for Venn diagrams and electric school buses. You won't talk about how John Sitterman stumbles down the stairs wearing shorts and a sweater instead of a suit to represent his state. We also can't talk about all the various Joe Biden mental illnesses that we have here, the Hunter Biden situation happening right now, with Hunter Biden actually going against his dad's DOJ, claiming that he was never on drugs to get a gun license because he had a gun while on drugs. But the Biden's DOJ actually wants to prosecute people that are on drugs and have a gun. So it's like they're battling each other out. It doesn't even make any sense. And of course, the media does not want to cover that. Stupid. Given the Republican lawmakers' recent history, the phase confidential art arrangements does not inspire confidence. Neither does the apparent fact that Santos is willing to risk going to jail rather than disclose the names of his backers. The congressman is due back in court on June 30th. Watch this space. Okay, so let's see what happens from here. I mean, we all know that he lies, and the next person lies, and you lie, and everybody and their father lies. It's just disappointing that we've come to a time that the media does not want to tell the full truth about what's going on. And it's just a sad day when they're acting like they're nonpartisan. I mean, I like how the media always tries to act nonpartisan. Like, you're not nonpartisan. Don't pretend that as if you are. Moving on to the next article, we actually have a Daily Wire article. We have New York City vending machines provide free crack pipes, condoms, Narcan to drug users. The city is breaking records for fatal overdoses. New York City debuted a new vending machine on Monday that provides free crack pipes, condoms, and Narcan for drug overdoses, among other items. So what does a condom have to do with drug overdoses? Doesn't even make any sense. The Big Blue machine is the first of 4 vending machines that will be installed in some of New York City's most drug-infested neighborhoods. City Health Department officials said the vending machines will offer safer smoking kits that include a crack pipe, mouthpiece, and lip balm for smoking crack and crystal meth, according to the New York Post. New York, what are you going? I was going to go to New York this summer too, and that's the funniest part. I was going to go to New York, and then I started reading all of the stories about this, about the homeless, about attacks in the subway system. It's just, I said, no, I am staying the heck away, and instead I'll go to Nashville. Like, I will stay away from these Democrat cities and go to Tennessee instead and Nashville. I would much rather go to those instead. So the machines will also offer a safer sniffing kit, as well as the emergency overdose drug Narcan, brand name Narcan, and drug test strips that detect fentanyl. People can also pick up other non-drug related items in the machine like condoms, tampons, nicotine gum, and first aid kit. Drug addicts can access the free items by punching in their New York City zip code. But if you're homeless, you don't have a zip code. Okay. The machines cost the city $11,000. Yeah, about that. City officials held a press conference on Monday next to one of the machines. We have a rising tide of fentanyl, and now we have other substances entering our drug supply, which is really putting us behind the 8 ball. Health Commissioner Dr. Ashwin Vasan said at the press conference. Vasan cited Exelin, known as Tranic, or the zombie drug, a horse tranquilizer that causes skin lesions that look like flesh is being eaten off and can slow a person's heart until it drops. Drug dealers are reportedly mixing Zarslin with other drugs like meth, cocaine, and fentanyl to prolong the high. Zarlin previously prolifted on the streets of San Francisco and Philadelphia, but it recently hit the streets of New York with astonishing speed, according to the law enforcement. Quote, we are at the midst of an overdose crisis at our city, which is taking a fellow New Yorker from us every 3 hours and is a major cause of falling life expectancy in New York City, Vasan added in a statement. Vasan said public health vending machines are an innovative way to meet people where they are and to put life-saving tools like Narcan in their hands. This is an important arrow in our quiver, Vasan said. It's not the be-all and end-all solution, but it's an important tool that says to New Yorkers, hey, we are going to bring the tools that saves lives to you. The first vending machine does not include syringes for drugs like heroin, but other machines may include them, Vasan said. City officials said similar vending machines in Philadelphia and Nevada, as well as Denmark and in Europe and Australia, have proven effective at lowering the overdose rate and spread of diseases. Fatal overdose data for 2022 is still being compiled, but officials estimate 2022 have been the deadliest years on the record for drug overdoses death. There was a total of 1,370 fatal overdoses in the city in just a half of the year in 2022. Oh, New York City. What's going on? And you're saying that people should still visit you? No. I'm not. In all of 2021, there were 2,668 overdose deaths in New York City, a record number. In 2020, 2,103 people fatally overdosed in the city. About 48% of the deaths involved an opioid and 80% of them involved fentanyl. And according to the New York City Department of Health, fentanyl is the deadliest synthetic opioid that is 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times more potent than heroin. Yeah, no, fentanyl is not good. It can kill you, so stay away from that. We have Florida's long-standing battle with its pro-gender identity judge. The federal judge who issued a temporary block on portions of the Florida law protecting children from life-damaging medical treatments in the name of so-called gender-affirming care has a history of thwarting the Sunshine State's conservative movement. United States District Court of Northern District of Florida Judge Robert Hinkle defied basic biological science on Tuesday when he concluded gender identity is real, in a ruling that partially strikes down a law signed by Governor Ron DeSantis last month that bans doctors from prescribing puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to minors. Hinkle, who former President Bill Clinton nominated, ruled that the benefits of treatment with GnRH, Argonus, or puberty blockers, and eventually with cross-sex hormones, would outweigh the risks, despite substances receiving a warning from the Food and Drug Administration. Last year, due to a potential brain swelling, loss of vision, and other serious risks for children, the elephant in the room should be noted at the outset. Hinkle wrote in a 44-page ruling, "Gender identity is real. The record makes this clear," according to him. But Hinkle's latest moves comes after controversial actions in recent years taken by Judge against DeSantis and conservative members of Florida legislature. In August 2020, DeSantis suspended liberal Hillsborough County State Attorney Andrew Warren, a George Soros-funded prosecutor, for refusing to uphold certain state laws and undoing police work, which authorities argued emboldened criminals. DeSantis also ousted Warren after the attorney pledged not to prosecute women for violating a recently enacted state law that bans abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy and would forego criminals charging doctors who perform sex changes on parents in the event Florida lawmakers deemed it legal. During a press conference, DeSantis said that he will not allow this pathogen of ignoring the law to get a foothold in the state of Florida. Nearly 4 months later, Hinkle ruled that DeSantis violated the Constitution but upheld Warren's suspension, saying that the governor also made false allegations that the Florida attorney had blanket policies not to prosecute certain kinds of cases. Okay, first of all, you're contradicting yourself, buddy. So if the governor of your state passes a law or helps pass a law that says no more abortions and somebody does an abortion, that's a violation of the law. And if you do not prosecute that person for violating the law, you're not doing your job. You need to actually look in the mirror and say, I'm not doing my job. I need to do something better. Yes, do something better. Warren's removal from office headed to the federal appeals court in Alabama last month, but a final decision has not been made, according to a local Fox channel. In the months leading up to the 2020 presidential election, Hinkle dismantled portions of the Florida felon voting law that the state's Republican-controlled legislature passed last year that requires people with felony convictions to pay all outstanding court debts to be eligible to vote. Although Hinkle has not completely struck down the law, he argued that nearly 775,000 felons with outstanding legal and financial obligations barred from voting violated the United States ban on poll taxes. No, that's not true, because it's not a poll tax. It's your actual taxes. It's your actual bills. How can you vote when you're a felon, first of all? So you should be thankful that we're actually giving you this opportunity. And second of all, you need to pay your balances. You need to pay your debts off to be responsible. And then we can see that you're responsible and we can give you that right to vote. But the right to vote is a privilege. It's something that we need to preserve, and it's something that we need to make sure that the people with a lot of law background, a lot of criminal activity, do not vote for the wrong things, because they can easily make the wrong decisions when they've been in that circumstance. Quote, "This pay-to-vote system would be universally decried as unconstitutional, but for one thing, each citizen at issue was convicted at some point in the past of a felony offense, the judge wrote in his 125-page ruling. A state may disenfranchise felons and impose conditions on their free infringement, but the conditions must pass constitutional scrutiny. Okay, so why does this not? How about we explain that? Although former President Donald Trump clinched Florida in the 2020 election by a 3.4 margin, Hinkle's report effects did not go unnoticed in the southern red state, with Hinkle's latest move using federal authority to override Florida's historic legislation that protects children from harmful leftist initiatives such as mutilating surgical procedures. The battle could reach the United States Supreme Court in the near future. Jeremy Redfern, a spokesperson for DeSantis, told Reuters via email that the governor's office obviously disagrees with the judge ruling. Quote, "We will continue fighting against the rogue elements in the medical establishment that push ideology over evidence to protect against mutilating our kids," Redfern said. And I completely agree. And that's why I do really appreciate DeSantis for standing up for the children when not a lot of people do. Moving on to the next article, we actually have a Breitbart article. We have fights outside California school board meeting over LGBT curriculum. So that should not be this should not be a thing. Why are you pushing LGBT stuff on children? It doesn't matter. How about we wait until they're older, like in college, and then we can talk about this stuff. Or leave it up to the parents. Los Angeles, California, fights broke out Tuesday between a group of conservative protesters and left-wing counter demonstrators outside a school board meeting in Glendale, California, that dismissed LGBT right issues in curriculum. Protests outside a Glendale meeting turned violent as groups began several brawls as administrators debate gender and sexual identity studies. Demonstrators outside the Glendale Unified School District building stayed relatively civil throughout the day. However, scuffles between protesters and counter-demonstrators began after 6 p.m. The same groups, totaling about 200 people, protested outside of North Hollywood Elementary School last week. School administrations said many of the protesters did not have students in the district. One group said Gays Against Groomers supports LGBT rights but not indoctrination of young children. I completely agree with them. As Breitbart News reported last month, parents in the nearby North Hollywood pulled their children out of the local school to protest a Pride Month assembly. Many of the parents were conservative Christians from the Armenian community. The boycott was occupied by a priest outside the school, in which parents and sympathetic activists voiced their opinion to teaching about alternative sexualities and gender transitions in school. Democrats, including the White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, has described reactions to LGBT rights in school curricula as, quote, hateful, but many parents feel such indoctrination is not age appropriate, whether the sexuality is in question is gay, straight, or otherwise. Some also approve, some also oppose in school celebrations of Pride Month, an observance that often carries political messages and which clashes with some traditional religious doctrines. And I completely agree. If you're sitting here saying, oh, well, we need to teach this person about the kink fandom and we need to make sure that they dress up like a dog so we can beat them in the butt. Like, what? Okay, why are you talking to a kid about that, first of all? And second of all, why are we going to teach kids about gay sex at all? Why are we going to teach them about that? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. No, we leave that out of the children's schools because that's just disgusting. We're going to confuse them. They know what a boy and a girl is. That's it. We can't say, oh, you know, Bob and Sally. Yeah, Sally can become Bob if he really wanted. He, as in she, and Bob can become Sally if she really wants, quote unquote, she. Blinken dismisses human rights. Oh, well, with that being said, let's move into the other Breitbart article we have here. We have Blinken discusses human rights with Saudi Crown Prince, an awkward follow-up act to Nicholas Martiro. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on Wednesday local time for the first of his major arrangements in Saudi Arabia, reportedly discussing, among other issues, progress on human rights and clean energy. Blinken landed in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday for what is expected to be a fraught visit, given the doctrination of relations between Washington and Riyadh under far-left President Joe Biden, who declared as a candidate in 2020 that he would turn the longtime United States ally into a pro-Arab state. Apparently mindful of the comment, the Saudi government, headed by bin Salman, known commonly as its initials MBS, has changed its foreign policy in the past 2 years to move closer to America's enemies, most primarily China and Iran. Yeah, this should not happen at all. This should not happen, because if this continues to happen, we're going to lose our allies, and we don't want to lose them as our allies, because of the fact that they provide us with a lot of gas, and we don't want to pay any more for gas, considering it has gone up a lot. I would say it's at least double than it was under Trump, so it's just crazy. Blinken's meeting with MBS followed the official reopening of Iran's embassy in Radar in a visit by Venezuelan socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro, an Iranian ally who had previously no significant relationship with Saudi Arabia. The State Department said in a statement on Wednesday that Blinken used his meeting with MBS to prioritize the war on terrorism, particularly efforts to ensure the Islamic State does not pose a renewed threat to the Middle East. The group is currently most active in southern Africa in efforts against the Shiite Houthi terrorists in Yemen. Among the many policies Biden has enacted that have frustrated the Saudis, the president stripped the Iran-backed Houthis of a foreign terrorist organization distinction as one of the first acts in office, granting them greater financial opportunities and preceding a sting of terror attacks jeopardizing the Saudi oil industry. Blinken and MBS reportedly affirmed their shared commitment and advanced stability, security, and prosperity across the Middle East and beyond. According to the State Department, the Saudi Foreign Ministry shared photos and video of the encounter featuring a sober crown prince. The sanctuary also emphasized that our literal relationship is strengthened by progress on human rights. The statement by spokesperson Matthew Miller read, without elaborating on the nature of the alleged human rights talks. Our other topics mentioned include clean energy and the war in Sudan. The Emirati newspaper, The National, reported that the two met after midnight in Jeddah and spoke for nearly 2 hours, citing an anonymous American official who described the talks as candid. The newspaper listed the nation's foreign minister and national security advisor as attending the meeting alongside the crown prince. Reuters, apparently citing the same unnamed official, as also describes the talks as candid and celebrated a good degree of convergence on mutual interest. According to the news agency, Blinken also raised the possibility of Saudi Arabia normalizing relations with Israel, a top he had mentioned as a priority before leaving Washington. The United States has a real national security interest in promoting normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, Blinken said in the remarks to the organization IPAC this weekend. The two sides reportedly promulgated the discussion of Israel with a promise to continue discussions. Reuters mentioned another topic as a priority for America in their report on Monday prior to Blinken's arrival. Saudi Arabia's growing relationship with China. Citing a think tank expert, Reuters described urging the Saudis to back away from the blossoming friendship with Beijing as probably the most important element of Blinken's visit. China did not appear as a top in the State Department readout of their meeting or other reports on what was discussed. MBS has spearheaded efforts to forge a closer relationship with China. Founded on Saudi Arabia, the custodian of the holiest sites of Islam, ignoring the fact that China has spent the past 5 years engaging in the campaign of genocide against its Turkic Muslim population. Saudi officials have gone so far as to arrest individuals expressing concern in the country over the Uyghur genocide and honored communist dictator Xi Jinping with an offensive welcome to the country during the visit in December, a stark contrast to the icy reception Biden was offered last summer. No, and I completely agree. Even if we look at the welcome that Trump had, there was dancing, there was parties going on, the same thing here, Xi Jinping. And then over here, Joe Biden comes in and he just gets a fist bump. That's it. A fist bump. Oh, and then Joe Biden's all happy. Guys, oh, I tripped. Like, no. Listen, no. So we cannot have this happen. So over here, we have China actually terrorizing the Uyghur population, and then we have Saudi Arabia celebrating. That's disgusting. So the United States needs to stay firm and say, no, if this keeps happening, this is not good. So we need to be very careful of this happening. First trouble, China has reported MBS with a prime position in the country's Belt and Road Initiative, a global debt trap program that ensures poor countries with the priority loans, presumably meant to be used to pay for infrastructure projects the countries cannot afford. While most BRI partners are loan recipients, Beijing offered the Saudi Arabia partnership in which it can fund the projects to poor countries, the position of beneficiary rather than victim. China has helped Saudi Arabia broker a surprise truce with Iran, its longtime top geopolitical rival. Beijing hosted talks between the two countries that culminated in the restoration of diplomatic ties in March and the return of flights connecting the two countries. Iran reopened its embassy in Riyadh the day before Blinken landed in Jeddah, granting China a major diplomatic victory. On the same day, MBS made his foreign engagement before his meeting with Blinken, an in-person discussion with Maduro, the Venezuelan dictator. The United States is offering a $15 million reward for the information leading to Maduro's arrest, which MBS could have presumably offered given knowledge of his location on Monday. Official photos of Maduro with a beaming crown prince appeared on the Saudi Foreign Ministry's social media accounts on Monday. The two leaders reportedly discussed prospects of for cooperation and opportunities to enhance them in various fields. We arrived at the Royal Palace in Jeddah of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to develop a working agenda seeking to consolidate the relations we maintain with this friendly country, Maduro wrote on Twitter celebrating the visit. Venezuela is firm in unity in the construction of the new world. Venezuelan news outlets suggested the two could cooperate in oil refining or other aspects of the petroleum industry. Blinken is expected to conclude his visit on Thursday after joining a ministerial meeting of the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, and a meeting of Global Coalition to defeat ISIS. And okay, so that's pretty good then, because we need to defeat ISIS. So it's not a good day that Saudi Arabia, which is supposed to be our ally in providing us gas, is going and teaming up with one of our enemies. So I don't know. This is not a good day for Joe Biden. Joe Biden, just take the L. I mean, honestly, you're not going to do anything anyway. Anthony Blinken, you're not going to do anything anyway. So how about we just accept this? And I mean, we can have one, if nothing else, we have this one good thing, taking down ISIS. Moving on to the next article, we actually have a Federalist article. We have the majority of Americans want corrupt FBI to be reformed or shut down. Wow. More than half of the nation, 63%, want the FBI to face some sort of punishment for weaponizing its power against the American people to achieve political goals. A new poll from Issues and Insights in TIPP suggests the FBI's years-long malfeasance, which includes misleading Congress, covering up corruption, manufacturing scandals, raiding the home of a former president, targeting innocent people based on their moral and political beliefs, and interfering in elections, is no secret to the majority of Americans who know the United States has a two-tiered system of justice. The agency's laundry list of deeply rooted corruption become even more obvious in recent weeks after Special Counsel John Durham confirmed that there was never any evidence to sustain the agency's seriously flawed Crossfire Hurricane investigation of collusion between then-presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russia. Of the 1,358 respondents surveyed between May 31st and June 2nd, mere weeks after the Durham report surfaced, 39% said that they want the FBI to be reformed by Congress to keep it from meddling in future elections. Americans' widespread contempt for the polarized federal agency is not exclusive to one voting bloc. Overall, 75% of Republicans, 75% of Republicans, 59% of Democrats, 57% of independents appear to understand that the FBI is a threat to the nation that must be addressed with some form of retribution or rehabilitation. Only 15% of Americans believe that the FBI should be left alone because it has already learned its lesson. The desire to shut down the FBI is a stronger among Republicans, 37% of whom they want to see is the agency agency torn down and then rebuilt from scratch. And I completely agree with this idea. We need to, because the agency right now has too much power. And it doesn't even use its power for good. It just uses its power for political endeavors. Only 14% of Democrats agreed that the FBI should be completely revamped. In total, 24% of Americans believe that the FBI should face or forced collapse because it cannot be trusted to do its job. Blue voters may not be fully on board with humiliating the FBI, but nearly half, 45%, say that they think that a congressional overhaul of the agency is a good idea. Approximately 39% of Republican voters say that they would be satisfied with a Congress-led purge of the nation's principal federal law enforcement agency. Americans' frustrations with the weaponized government have grown increasingly evident over the last year. Approximately 58% of registered voters said that last summer that the Attorney General Merrick Garland should enforce a federal law prohibiting protests at the homes of Supreme Court justices following the Debs/Jackson decision, while Garland was busy prosecuting his political opponents instead. Mere weeks after the FBI's partisan raid on former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home in August 2022. Nearly half of the independents confessed that the Department of Justice and the FBI are, quote, too political, corrupt, and not to be trusted. Ever since they took back the House in 2022, midterm elections, Republicans have followed through on their promise to expose the partisan inner workings of the Department of Justice in their primary enforcement arm. The GOP-led investigations into the FBI duperty are technically making good progress. Yet, this poll demonstrates committee hearings, letter-wrote campaigns, press conferences, and empty promises to defund the agency are not what the majority of Americans want when it comes to holding the government accountable. Until Congress enacts concrete reform, the FBI's partisan targeted of Americans reported retaliation against whistleblowers and exclusive stonewalling will continue while Americans' desires are ignored by their sworn representatives. And I completely agree. So the FBI in recent years has been just taken over by political interests, and they no longer do what they were meant and sought out to do because of the fact that they just don't care anymore. And obviously they need an overhaul because they're not doing what they're meant out to do. They're wasting a bunch of money when we have our national debt at record high. And on top of that, they're prosecuting everyday Americans when it comes down to the school board meetings in 2020, when it comes down to this with former President Trump, the raiding at his Mar-a-Lago vacation home. It's just disgusting. Why are you politicizing an agency? We need to unpoliticize it, and we need to remake it from the ground up, and then we need to defund it because there's no reason why it has to have that much power when we have our local agencies to do the work. Now, moving into the last article, we actually have a Federalist article. We have whoever you are, Chris Sununu, thanks for not running for president. It should be a rule that if you want to announce whether you're running for president, no less than 5 people have to know who you are and what you do for a living. Reporters in Washington don't count. I can see where they're going with this because there's a lot of people that are running for president that have 1 to 2% of the vote. Like, you're never going to win, guy. A man named Chris Sununu declared in a Washington Post op-ed this week that he will, in fact, not be seeking the Republican presidential nomination. And I honestly doubt that there are even 3 people reading this that could identify Sununu in a lineup of pidgey white men. I've heard of him before, but I had no idea what he looked like, and I wasn't even sure if he was still an elected official. And it turns out he was sitting governor of New Hampshire. Well, New Hampshire is such a small New Hampshire, it's on the east. It's on the southern eastern. So nobody really cares about that. Nobody really cares about that corner of the United States because we have Massachusetts over here and New Hampshire over here and Connecticut over here. We're just destroying everything. I mean, maybe not New Hampshire because New Hampshire is the only red state, but all of this surrounding, we're just ruining stuff over here. But more importantly, if you're going to announce a campaign or explain why you're not running, the reasons for it shouldn't be blatantly stupid. That Sununu chose to lay out his thorough process was already a clue that there wasn't something Republican voters needed to be concerned with. But his explanation was equal parts delusional and pathetic in declaring how notably he believes he is by not running because he will instead be more effective in the sidelines, reaching the base about what they should and shouldn't be more important to them. Quote, to win, Republicans need our message to appeal to new voters, and we can do this without sacrificing classic conservative principles of individual liberty, low taxes, and local control, wrote Sununu. But we must abandon the issues that we solely made for social headlines, such as banning books or issuing curriculum buyouts to local school districts hundreds of miles away from state capitals. What are you talking about? So you don't think that we should have a ban on sexual books for elementary school people? So you don't think that gay sex should be banned in elementary school? You think that sexual kinks in the LGBTQRSTVWXYZ community should be read in elementary school classrooms? Is that what you're talking about? Putting on a condom should be talked about in elementary school classrooms? Is that what you're talking about? So if we have a sexual book, that should be allowed in elementary school classrooms. It's not banning books. It's making sure that these books are age appropriate for the children that are reading them. Like, what are you talking about? Yes, Sununu is one of those Republicans who still believes winning national elections can be done with slogans about tax cuts and free markets. In other words, he is the kind of Republican who believes he's elected to do nothing. See, I'm doing nothing. Limited government. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is also set to make a puzzling campaign announcement this week, having spent a last couple of months indicating that the sole purpose of his running would be a political damage to politically damage Trump as much as possible before next summer. After all, isn't that exactly what the country needs? Yet another one of more Republican with no shot at becoming the nominee, sucking up to the media by attacking the former president. Trump is currently averaging more than 50% support for the nomination, with his closest competitor at about 30 points behind him. That's the context of the last one criminal indictment, a court ruling him liable for sexual assault, and of course, the entire media trying to ruin his life. How cute that Sununu and Christie think there's anything they can do, they can contribute to the mission, either by running or not. And I completely agree. So there's nothing that you can say to make his life more damaged, and there's nothing that you can actually do to make him not have the support of the base, because of the base of Donald Trump is always going to be there for him, no matter what he does. I mean, he even admitted it himself, and I don't know if this is true, probably a joke, but he said he can just shoot somebody and he'll still have support. So, I mean, I can kind of see where he's getting at, but obviously it's just a joke. But with that being said, we're going to sum up this video, or this episode here. Thank you all for watching, and I hope that you did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy this podcast, please like and subscribe down below, because I do post new episodes of the show every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you all for watching, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Bye.